Welcome, all of you out there. Thank you for joining us for the Alexander Valley Film Festival. I'm your moderator. I'm Sue Campbell. I'm a member of the board of directors for AVFS. And with me, I have Debbie Lum, the director of Try Harder, and Lou Nakasako, who is the photographer and producer. But before we get to talking to them, I've got some housekeeping to do. So first of all, I want to read our land acknowledgement, which is an important part of our Film Society diversity efforts. The Alexander Valley Film Society recognizes that we are on unceded land of the Coast Miwok, Pomo, and Wapo. We respectfully acknowledge the Indigenous people who have lived here for thousands of years and who continue to contribute in meaningful ways to their communities and our society as a whole. Our shared history includes the genocide, forced removal, and ethnic cleansing of Indigenous people. AVFS is committed to centering Indigenous people and stories to recognize the past and celebrate the resiliency of Native people and their culture. Our deepest thanks go to Nikki Myers-Lim and the California Indian Museum and Cultural Center, as well as Clint McKay of the Pepperwood Preserve for their assistance with this acknowledgement. Please visit our website to learn more, www.avfilmsociety.org/equity. Also, a couple of housekeeping things. If you need tech support, and hopefully you don't, because we've been doing this for most of the week, actually 1 week, please go to the website, avfilmsociety.org/FAQ, and there's a live chat there for help. Also, if you would like live auto captioning, you can do that through Zoom as a selection. If you have questions, you're welcome to put them in our chat window. And last but not least, no racism, homophobia, transphobia, misogyny, or hate speech will be tolerated. This is a safe space for everyone to celebrate film artists and the stories they tell. So with that, welcome Debbie and Lou. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to just start with sort of an easy softball question, and that is, how did you guys get involved in this project?
Go ahead, Debbie.
Well, I dragged Lou into it, yeah, I was actually starting a film called My Tiger Mom, which explored the stereotype of tiger mothers, you know, the so-called Asian American moms who push really hard for academic success for their kids. I'm a mom, and Lou and I started working on that way back a long time ago, actually. Then we wanted to understand what the so-called tiger cubs, you know, the kids who are the children of tiger parents, might be going through, and heard about this program at Lowell High School that I'll pass it over to Lou because he was actually the one who found out about the program.
Yeah, so pretty much long story short, my ex-girlfriend, she worked at a lab at UCSF, and she told me that a lot of Lowell kids would do the program as part of like an internship, right? Because they were interested in science. And then the other thing is that it's a good program for like if you want to go into science for your major in college, right? So there was a lot of kids who, you know, were very academically inclined, and we were like, okay, like if we, and then we met a couple of students, and then we found out that, you know, there was this whole program at Lowell called the Lowell Science Research Program, which basically helped place a lot of these kids into internships around the city and whatnot. And the brainchild of that whole program is Richard Shapiro, who is in the film. So Richard was very gracious in terms of being our entry point into Lowell. And it was basically because of him that, you know, jump-started the whole process of getting access to the school. So it was great that we had him as an advocate. And then basically when we got to Lowell, we were like, oh, wow, there's like this really great story. And the kids were super open to, you know, to telling their story, right? And, you know, when Debbie and I kind of talked about it, it was kind of an opportunity that we couldn't pass up, you know, because access is everything in documentaries.
Yeah, no kidding. And so you didn't have any challenges in gaining the trust of the students?
I it I mean, maybe in the beginning there's always a little bit of, you're kind of feeling each other out, but honestly, it wasn't I actually didn't find it to be that much of a challenge actually. I mean, once we started interviewing the kids, they were actually pretty open. I think the challenge comes in is the fact that it's over a 9-month period, right? So naturally there's going to be like some ups and downs, and it's like any other kind of relationship where you get to know each other really well and you kind of have to work through each other's quirks, right? So I would say that those were the main challenges, but I would say that initially the kids, I mean, thankfully were very open about their experiences.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we used
they
to say,
definitely
as we were saying off camera, that Lou was sort of incognito, reliving high school. And I was kind of like the friendly mom that they could complain about their moms to. Um, but in all, seriousness, we did spend a full year in advance of when we were there, meeting the students and talking to them. And so it was, it was a good amount of time that we spent, that we earned their trust. Yeah, and Lou just really put in the hours to get the footage that we put in the film.
And how did you choose the 5 to focus on? I assume you filmed a lot of others, and then in the editing process, picked these 5 to follow. How did that happen?
You
Well,
want to go, Debbie? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, I can go. I mean, you're right. We filmed hundreds of kids, and you can see many of them ended up in the chorus of voices that you hear in the story. There were so many amazing students at Lowell High School that we really felt like we could almost drop a pin on anyone. And that being said, the 5 that ended up carrying the entire story they just all had a certain thing about them, whether they were really open to the filming and genuine, or they just represented different aspects of the entire story of kids at Lowell trying to get into their elite colleges, elite dream colleges. And, there were other kids that we had to leave out that it was really, it was hard to do it, but, one of the students, for example, that we filmed early on, on the outside, she had braces. She's like an all-American girl, super outgoing, leadership, had, running one of the extracurricular clubs. And we filmed her getting her citizenship because she'd only actually been in the US for like 5 years. And, there were just lots of kids like that whose story we couldn't include in depth. Yeah.
Lou, did you want to add anything to that?
Oh,
You're
sorry, I was
muted.
on mute for a second. Yeah, I guess, when it came down to picking the 5 characters during the editorial process, I mean, if you notice, like each of the 5 characters kind of has their own unique personality. So, on one hand, we have a couple kids who have parents who are very involved in their academic careers. And then we also have one where the parent really isn't involved that much, or if at all. And I think that was the key when we started crafting the film was, how, because this is a public institution, right? So naturally you're going to get a lot of different stories, a lot of different personalities. So the key was just figuring out, okay, how can we have like this very eclectic group that kind of give you a broad portrait of the different types of kids that go to this school. So I thought that was like a very important thing for us when we were constructing the cut. Yeah.
Yeah. So it kind of shifted from tiger mom focus to tiger cub, and that was, not just Asian, but other ethnicities as well. Catherine suggested I confess this because I told her this before we started. I have actually in the past served as an alumni interviewer for Stanford. So I found this fascinating to watch, thinking, oh, this is the other side of the fence that I see all the time. But, you know, the Stanford message is kind of what they say. They don't want everybody to look the same. So the context in the film does make it not so hot, but I think that is sort of what they tell people. Anyway, I thought it was fascinating. Did you know you were going to be focusing on college, getting into college when you started this, or did that just become part of the storyline?
Yeah, it was always about getting into college. I mean, I'm a parent. My kids are a lot younger. When I started making the Tiger Mother story, my oldest was just entering kindergarten, and I was surrounded by parents who were completely freaking out about how to get their kids into college when they're 4 years old. So I sort of wanted to explore that entire process. And I heard about it from my older sister who was going through all of this with her kids and discovering that the college admissions process has completely changed over the last, in the last 15 years. It's nothing like it was when we were kids. I mean, I think I applied to 4 colleges, and it's a brutal process that we knew would be inherently dramatic. But I mean, one of the reasons why we switched gears in telling the story is that when we got to Lowell and we met the students, we just felt this real palpable yearning for them to have their stories told, and I think now if you look at where we're at today in 2021, Lowell High School is like majority Asian American population, and the kids there felt like they were sort of invisible, and I think we were kind of surprised as filmmakers who've made, kind of dedicated our lives to telling Asian American stories, that they were so open, because actually, oftentimes we're sort of taught in our community to kind of keep your head down and try not to, get harassed, which is what we see nowadays all the time happening. And so it was kind of this feeling of, I mean, I think for us, it was a great feeling to know that the students were really open and wanted to have their story told. Yeah. So I feel like, and in the end, Sundance selecting our film, their timing is impeccable as well,
I was going to ask about that. Did you get to go, or were you doing it virtually?
The whole thing was virtual. Yeah. So even all the parties and stuff afterwards, we all had to like be these little avatars and meet all the other filmmakers, which was kind of interesting. It was an interesting experience.
Yeah, I'm not sure it really happened. Did it happen?
Yeah, it kind of came and went.
But now you're getting into other film festivals. As we talked about before, you're going to be opening night at CamFest in San Francisco. I think that's May 13th, I think, at the drive-in, which is a pretty special experience these days because it's a big screen. So you must be excited about that. That must be great.
Yeah, we're really excited about CamFest, May 13th, 2 screenings at the Fort Mason Drive-In. There's also a virtual one as well. But CAM, Center for Asian American Media, was one of our early supporters. They came in during production. And they run this amazing festival. It's like one of the oldest, largest Asian American film festivals in the US. And they're our public television partner. So we're really proud to be part of CamFest. Yeah.
Congratulations. Well, and so I should ask about, what's the audience's reaction been to this film? What have you learned so far? I know it hasn't been screening really broadly, but you have screened it several places.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I mean, the thing about it is, I think high school and sort of the pressures and the traumas of high school apparently are very universal. And what has been really amazing is to meet so many Asian American kids and kids in general who've finished high school within the last maybe 5 years, who just say this is their story. I've spoken to people in, obviously in California, on the East Coast, in Canada, Singapore, Malaysia, the Philippines. I mean, it's a pretty universal story. And it's been really rewarding to hear people say thank you for capturing what we've been through.
Yeah, I mean, I'm approaching the age where like a lot of my friends are like, you know, starting to have kids, or, you know, there's friends of friends who have kids. So, you know, I'll go to these outdoor, you know, social gatherings, and, you know, these friends of mine were generous enough to like buy a ticket for the virtual screening. And then, you know, probably the most, energized conversations are all about how they're going to get their kids into like a good school, right? And I think that's when they saw the film, they were like, wow, like this game has really changed a lot. So you know, I think our film and the topic really struck a chord, you know, with a lot of people. And I think, you know, traditionally, you know, this obsession over college has always been, you know, a stereotype amongst Asian Americans. But, you know, you get outside, you realize that everybody is tripping about college. You know what I mean? So I think the fact that we were able to capture that is, you know, has been pretty special. And I'm actually very proud of, you know, the fact that, you know, we're getting people to actually like think about it in a more, in a deeper, more complex way. So yeah, it's been very rewarding.
And if I
Good.
may add, we're actually, you know, part of what we're doing as a film goes out into the world, is at festivals and through community engagement, we are launching this impact campaign, which really looks at mental health and student agency within this diverse college admissions journey. So we've been working with mental health advocates and organizations that really support students through this process. And it's something that we'd love people to check out. It's, you know, if you go to our website, tryharderfilm.com/impact, you can find more about it. But it's basically what Lou is saying, you know, we're all of us who are parents or who have kids going through school, you know, it's a really hard time for kids in school, especially in COVID. And it's high school has really changed. The pressures are so much higher. They go all the way down to kindergarten, you know, and we're really feel very fortunate that people can use our film to really get at these things that are, you know, really in need of discussion and rethinking. Yeah.
Absolutely. And actually, speaking of the pandemic, you had to finish this film during COVID, right? How did that work?
That was painful, to be perfectly honest. And it did put you know, it made it difficult. It definitely came out a little bit later than we thought it would because of COVID. Yeah. But in some ways, you know, there's been many pros and cons of COVID. And I like to think of the coronavirus as a truth serum, because I think it forces all of us to reckon with the things that are really, truly important to us. So, you know, I feel amazed that, I mean, myself personally, my family rallied behind me and helped support me to finish the film and get it out there, because it wasn't easy.
I bet. Switching gears a little bit, are you aware of the San Francisco School Board, the litigation against them about changing the admission policy to get into Lowell? Have you guys heard about that? Has anybody asked you about that?
Nobody's asked us about it, but we've heard about it. Yeah.
Well, what do you think? What do you think?
Look, I think the school board has good intentions. I'll say this, that Lowell has been around and it has been a magnet school for a long time. I have no idea what the exact stats are, but it's probably at least 40, 50 years, probably even a little bit longer, right? So there are certain, there's a certain structure and a certain attitude that is kind of in place, you know? And the thing is that the one thing that we didn't get to cover in the film because, you know, the whole story was revolving around trying to get into college. But, you know, when freshmen come into Lowell, it's a huge, huge adjustment. You know what I mean? And, you know, I think the stereotype is that it's only non-Asians that struggle when they first get into Lowell. That's incorrect. All this, like I'd say 75% of the students struggle to adapt to the Lowell lifestyle, right? Now, if you're gonna just plop in, you know, students who may or may not meet the requirements of today, you know, and if the teachers are still going to say have the same curriculum, you know what I mean, and if the culture is still going to be, you know, the way it is, I'm not sure just this little band-aid is going to make the dent that the school board is thinking that it will make. That's just my instinct. You know, it's hard to, I mean, as we all know, it's hard to just switch an institution like that. You know what I mean? Like I think it needs a little bit more brain power and thinking than just this reactionary response. You know, so that's kind of where I stand on it. But you know, I mean, what do I know? I'm not a politician. I'm not a policymaker. So all my answer is totally anecdotal.
I mean, I think what happens is Lowell High School has always been a lightning rod for the community because it, you know, even before this last 15 years of insane push toward get kids into college, the pressures and how difficult and impossible it's become. Lowell High School has always been representative of, you know, this, it's like the, you know, it's the school that has to stand in for everything about San Francisco Unified. And I think if you look at it from an outsider's vantage, which is what, you know, I didn't grow up in San Francisco. I came from a very different place. And I think I feel very appreciative of what Lowell High School is, that it's this public high school, a place where the public has the right to an excellent education on par with what, you know, most people have to pay for, which is how it really should be in America, you know. But it gets held up and held responsible for things that are basically, I think, needing to be fixed in the entire school district. So if you look at why is there not enough African-American students at Lowell High School, that is really a failing of the district from, you know, pre-K all the way up through 9th grade. And if you talk to the students at Lowell, which we did, I think they all feel terrible that the school is not as diverse as it should be. And they also, you know, don't, I mean, I think for the most part, wouldn't stand for the, you know, the terribly racist things that have come to the fore. And I will say that is something that needs to be fixed in all high schools, not just Lowell High School. And I hope that Lowell High School can address this issue. And yeah, I think that it's a real problem for the whole community. So.
Well, we should probably start wrapping this up. I'll just ask one last question. And if you don't know, that's okay. Anything new happening to you guys? Do you have things on the horizon? What's next for each of you? New movies?
Yeah, so I'm working on a couple other projects, but I can't I can't actually
You
talk
can't-
about it.
Okay.
At the moment. Yeah, if that's okay.
Oh,
'Cause,
it's okay.
yeah.
How about you, Debbie?
I'm doing, we're launching the film as, more than full-time, especially the
Well,
impact
yeah, a lot.
campaign. We're still working on the Tiger Mother documentary that hasn't been finished yet, sort of a longitudinal study. And I'm developing a couple of other projects. It's a little early to talk about it, but
Well, we'll keep our eyes open for Tiger Mom or whatever you call it. So I think that's it. Thank you guys for joining us. And I believe that this will be on our website for a while, so people can watch this as a recording. So if you want anybody to sign in and check it out, feel free. And again, good luck with your film. I think it's going to have a great run, given that we don't have a lot of people in theaters. Hopefully you get a good festival run. Thank you.
Thank you.
so
Thank you.
much.
Yeah. Thank you so much.